consumption in 2022 was somewhere around 1.2 billion ounces. The estimate this year is a 1.4 billion ounces. We don't know that number exactly yet, but call it whatever you want to call it. So that's a pretty darn big deficit. So I don't know how long those deficits can last before you see, much higher silver prices.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics as we are amazingly getting set to round out the year of 2023 in the silver world. Although, fortunately, joining me today, someone that we've had on the show many times over the years, probably been far too long, although someone that everyone in the audience knows quite well is Keith Neumeyer, President and CEO of First Majestic Silver. And Keith, great to have you back here. We'll look forward to discussing some of the things that went on in 2023, your thoughts on what we may have had in 2024 in the silver market, some of the dynamics. Of course, we'll also talk some First Majestic Silver, but welcome on in. Great to see you again. And how's everything going today?
Hey, Chris, it's great seeing you again. Quite honestly, you look a little bit different than the last time we had our interview, but you're looking great and super pleased to have a chat with you today.
Well, it's great to dig in, and we'll start with what we saw in 2023. As I mentioned before we hit the record button, here we are, amazingly, a couple pennies. We're in positive territory on the year as we record on Tuesday, the 19th in the afternoon, starting at 24.30, now up 4 cents on the year. Has been a bit of a roller coaster along that ride and had banks fall apart. We've had interest rates stay higher for longer. Now we have the announcement a week ago that seems like the hikes are officially done, and I think some positive conditions going into 2024. Although, any thoughts on what we've just experienced for the past year and any takeaways you had?
Well, I guess our interview is well timed. Nice to see a green day, during an interview. Before we got recording, I mentioned to you, which was quite significant to me. You asked about what's happened in 2023, and I travel constantly. I'm in conferences and dealing with investors and on the metal side and also on the equity side, mining stocks and so on and so forth. And I was quite surprised with the last month or so of travel, whereby all these young people are showing up at these conferences. So, and I'm thinking, wow, there's a whole new set of buyers out there that are looking at this industry, looking at buying physical metal and also mining stocks. And that's pretty exciting. I think that's a change. And I think over the next 1 or 2 years, as the metals, in my opinion, start to ramp up and go much higher than where they're currently trading, I think there's going to be a whole bunch of new investors coming into this resource sector. And that's not something we've seen, I think, for the last, decade likely.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, when people look around at what's going on in the world and then look at some of the levels things are priced at, we have the stock markets making new all-time highs, which
and it's only seven stocks.
Yeah, and it's on one hand incredible. We see some things seem impervious to the higher for longer. So obviously, I'm in agreement with you that where we stand, silver and the mining space, especially for people who are looking to buy low and sell high, has a good profile going forward. One of the things perhaps really setting us up for 2024 is that we've had 2-year wait for interest rate cuts. Last week, about as much as you can get before they actually cut the interest rates, gave us the indication. And Keith, I'm assuming you're not falling into the same confusion that the Fed's Austin Goolsbee, who, when he looked at last week's market reaction, said he was confused to see just about everything on the board soar. I'm guessing you found it pretty predictable given what they said, and curious how you see things setting up for 2024 based on where they're at now.
I don't think it's relevant. I think it's a bunch of headline noise that means nothing. I know that the market, the hedge funds, blah, 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 they trade against the Fed, but you go back, geez, it was probably Greenspan who probably made the Fed famous. Greenspan left the Fed as a billionaire, and who knows how that happened. Insider trading among all these crazy, people that manipulate the markets and trade on the Fed numbers and know the information way ahead of us, and it's just a money-making scheme. It's complete bullshit. I own gold and silver and mining stocks for completely different reasons. And I don't care what interest rates do. Your interest rates go to 0 tomorrow or 20% tomorrow. I'm going to make money either way. So it doesn't matter, because I know that gold is the ultimate currency and silver is in such a crazy supply deficit. If we're going to do what we need to do as a human race to electrify our planet, do all the things that we want to do, create electric cars, solar panels, cell phones, computers, refrigerators, all the things that we want, as a human race to improve our lives, we need silver. And so there's huge reasons why you want to own gold, and there's huge reasons why you own silver. Whatever the Fed does, the US government does, I don't give a shit.
I like it. I think that's the way to approach the Fed and a lot of the theatrics that come out of there. Keith, you mentioned that we have been experiencing a deficit over the past couple of years now. Silver Institute suggesting that we're in a structural deficit. You look at the demand sources that are coming out there, and that certainly does seem to fit with what we're seeing. At the same time, we have the lower silver price. You don't have a lot of new projects going online. How do you see this playing out? And I mean, we'll leave aside the timing, but I mean, is this something that you think is really set to become a bigger issue in the years going forward?
It's got to, right? Because I don't see any big production coming online. There's nothing permitted. Look at a couple of the key assets are out there that are 10+ million producers that could come online, but they're still 5 to 10 years out, and that's assuming everything goes well. Then there's assets out there that are super low grade, that are sub 50 grams. So you're talking about $50 rock coming out of the ground. That's going to cost you in today's money probably $150 to $200 to take that rock out of the ground. So you're going to be losing money. So the miners won't go after that rock, that ore. Well, they don't call it ore because it's not economic. But so you need prices that are at least 3 times higher just to make some of these ore bodies economic. And mining companies, they're very long games, right? So for a mine to come into production from the day you discovered it is likely 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, depending on jurisdiction and depending on complexity and size and of course investment dollars available and then prices and all those things impact if a mine will come into production sometime into the future. So if you have $50 silver price tomorrow, people get excited, but the boards of directors of these mining companies won't increase their investments because they know it's happened twice before, and they got screwed. So for them to go to their banks that they deal with and say, hey, look, we want to build this silver mine, and silver's at $50 today, they're going to look at you and say, really? Like, come on, like, look at history. Like, so they're not going to give the mining sector the funds to develop those mines. So, you need likely, 2-3 years of high metal prices, I'm talking about $50+ silver, sustainable, whereby the banks will get comfortable, the mining sector will get comfortable, and they go, okay, so $50 is the new low, right? Because right now the low of silver is basically $20. We've seen 20 hit how many times in the last decade, right? So the market's comfortable with calling $20 the low in silver, right?
Right.
So how long would it take for the banking sector to get comfortable calling $50 the low? It's not going to happen overnight. So you're probably talking a substantial amount of time for the banks to start cutting checks. So, how long does that take? So right now, if you go back and look at annual silver production for the last decade, it's flatlined basically at about 825 million ounces. In COVID, it dropped to 780. In 2016, it got up to 880. Last year it was at 830. This year the Silver Institute says it's going to be down 6% based on 2022 numbers. So call it 825, 820, whatever the number is. So that's kind of the max. So the mining sector cannot produce more than 850 million ounces of silver annually, period. Right? So we know that. So what does it take to double that? So consumption in 2022 was somewhere around 1.2 billion ounces. The estimate this year is a 1.4 billion ounces. We don't know that number exactly yet, but call it whatever you want to call it. So that's a pretty darn big deficit. So I don't know how long those deficits can last before you see, much higher silver prices. The silver's coming from somewhere. I know Russia's got silver. Maybe they're selling silver to finance whatever they're doing. China doesn't export silver, so who knows? And they're one of the largest producers, so who knows where that silver goes? Yeah, so it is a bit of a mystery, but nevertheless, I don't think you can see these kinds of prices last very much longer, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you mentioned there about how even if we get $50 or $75 silver price, I don't know whether I should say next week, and it's fun to think about it. Let's say we got it sometime in the near future that there's still that degree to which you needed to stay at that level for some point. In fact, I think perhaps one of the reasons that has led people to be staying cautious on the mining sector is they are fearful, all right, it's up at $24 now. What if the price is a couple bucks lower and we're back close to a break even line? So that certainly creates another parameter around increasing that silver production. And the other thing you touched on in there is, where is it coming from? We see the inventories falling. Is that a reasonable guess of what is making up this gap right now, and perhaps a good thing to keep an eye on going forward to when we really might run into some sort of bigger issue?
This goes back to your previous question, Chris. I don't believe any of this stuff. It's all bullshit. All the stuff you read, all the inventory levels, COMEX, LBMA, whatever you want, it's all made up numbers, means nothing. It's all bullshit. I don't follow it. I don't care what it says. It's relevant to me. I know as a mining company, if First Majestic was producing twice the silver that we're currently producing today, we could sell it in a heartbeat. So, that's all I care about. I run a company that produces silver, and we're not producing cobalt, where I have to go and find a buyer,
Right.
Or tungsten, where there might be one or two buyers worldwide, and you got to line up to sell your tungsten, right? We're a silver producer and gold, and I can tell you, there's a lineup to buy our metal. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, well, I can imagine that's the case, and certainly a good thing to hear. Have you been hearing from companies directly? I know that's something we've heard somewhat sporadically over the past couple of years. Are companies approaching the miners directly at this point?
They are, but we don't bother. if Elon Musk decided to give you a telephone call, I might talk to him.
Okay.
But no, we have it approached, and it's because they want ahead. They want a fixed price. You know, they want 1 year's production at X price. And like, well, you know, if I did that to our shareholders, I don't think our shareholders would be very happy. You know, because they buy First Majestic stock because they're playing the silver price. So, you know, they expect whatever, they expect what I expect. So, yeah, so it's a bit of a slippery road. You know, you know, if a big industrial producer like a Tesla or Mercedes or something like that decided to say, look, we want a supply agreement with you and we'll ride the market with you, but we want all your metal, okay, fine, that could make some sense, but I would definitely not fix the price.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, one of the other key areas where the silver is coming from is the non-primary miners. Although obviously that doesn't seem to be getting any easier on that side as well. In fact, I'm going to pull up something that you may have seen here, which perhaps speaks to that. Here is Robert Friedland talking about 15,000 per ton copper needed to spur new mines. So
Yeah,
add in that we have a big copper mine shut down in Panama. So not like the environment there is getting any
a
easier.
company I founded, by the way.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I think, you know, but yeah, it's very, very tough to see that. And Phil Pascal just passed away a couple weeks ago. And so very unfortunate timing.
And also doesn't indicate that we're likely to see any large sources of supply being put online by some of the non-primaries who aren't as price sensitive either.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, there's no big silver supplies coming anyway. So I don't know. You know, we need, as I said earlier, we need $100 silver to spur on new supply. And it can happen in a matter of a week. You know, it's gotta, you know, stay at reasonable prices for a lengthy period of time.
Well, I think that's certainly something that's good for people to keep in mind. I know silver and the silver industry has been a bit of a patience exercise in patience at times, yet you look at some of these things that are building. Keith, you also talked about how you're selling a lot of the silver directly. I know you opened a new mint, which
Yeah.
is close to being online. And perhaps if you could talk about how that process is going and then also the levels that you're hoping to get that up to.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting part of our business. You know, we're a mining company, obviously. And virtually all our metal goes through commercial industry. And whether it's, you know, mostly electronics. But nevertheless, we started our own direct sales to investors back in 2008. And it's been interesting. It was small to begin with, and it's grown over time, and it punched through over 10 million in revenue a couple of years ago, and we kind of ran into a wall where we knew the demand was there, but the mints would not supply us the metal that we wanted. We kept putting orders in, we kept delivering silver to these mints, and they just kept sitting on our metal, and they refused to produce it into products that we wanted to give to our customers. So it became quite frustrating. And about a year ago, I made the decision to open up our new mint. I said, okay, you know, this is crazy. And so we made the investment, we got a facility, and I was just there, well, last week actually, and it's looking pretty good. We expect to print our first bars in the second week of January. So it should be good. And we're expecting we'll likely do probably north of 30 million in revenue, maybe, you know, close to 40 million in revenue in 2024 through that facility. So we've not put out official guidance, you know, so watch for that. You're Chris, you kind of, you know, I maybe should have said those and give you those numbers, but we're pretty comfortable with it. We think that our revenues are going to increase 300 to 400% as a result of that, because the demand is there. And the minting industry, for whatever reason, does not want to supply that metal to your average investor, because I personally believe that the industrials, the big consumers, the electronic manufacturers, the automotive industry are sucking all that metal out of the market, and they don't want that metal to go into the retail environment.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to imagine if I was running an industrial company, that's certainly something that would be on my mind. And hopefully, with the new minting facility, we'll have some more of the cubes
Oh
coming
yeah,
on
those are
available soon.
beautiful.
I know
That's
these.
great. We can't even produce those anymore. So that's a collector's item. We hope to produce those again.
Well, me too. I've got a couple of these here sitting on my desk, and they're fun to play with as I watch the silver price from time to time.
Yeah.
Uh, Keith, in terms of First Majestic, thoughts looking back, obviously one of the big things that happened this year was shutting down the Jarrett Canyon mine. Any thoughts in hindsight and perhaps guidance? I know you're looking to have that back online, perhaps early 2026, but anything you could share there for people to be aware of?
It's Nevada's a pretty exciting place to be, I think. I think that investors can probably watch for more investments from First Majestic into the United States, into places like Nevada and potentially other states as well. We're all in Mexico. We've been there for 20 years. Actually, we've just broken our 20-year anniversary this past September.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so it's been a pretty exciting 20 years. I can tell you that 20 years ago, I didn't expect I'd be sitting here today, but we have a huge footprint in Mexico. We're one of the most important mining companies there are. I think we're the 5th largest mining company in Mexico, which is pretty impressive. But we have to diversify our portfolio, and that's what Jarrett Canyon is all about. In hindsight, okay, well, did we make a mistake? And we probably did. I think we probably should have shut it down on day one and started over. It's just I think we underestimated how difficult it would be to change the psychology of the workforce, and our people. We put a lot of people on that effort, and it just was a real challenge. And then winter came, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but that northern
Cold one.
It was terrible. Like here, in Vancouver, which is our head office, throughout the Western United States, Washington, Oregon, into California, Nevada, that last winter was just brutal. And that mine had minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit for weeks and weeks and weeks, and minus 20, and the whole mill just froze right up. So that mill needed 3,000 tons a day to be economic, and we were lucky to get 1,000 tons a day through that mill, and on any given day. So it was just burning money, and we said, okay, well, call uncle and call it a day and go on with life. And so right now we're exploring. We're gonna get you'll see the guidance coming out in January. We've got some pretty exciting guidance coming out on Jarrett Canyon for 2024, 2025. It's definitely an important asset for us. We expect to get it up running again, as you said, by 2026, and just gonna take some time.
Yeah, and I've heard you mention in another call that you're getting inquiries on getting access to the roaster there. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because that roaster is extremely strategic. It's only one of 3 roasters in the entire state of Nevada. So it's and the other 2 are owned by Newmont, Barrick Newmont, and they're full. And so this roaster, it's 5,000 ton a day roaster, and it should be operating, and I think it will be operating. I think ultimately we'll probably get feed from other mines within the area, combine that with Jarrett Canyon, and I think at that point it could be quite interesting.
Okay, and another thing that you touched on when you were mentioning Nevada is that you are looking at different projects that are out there, and maybe perhaps you can speak more generally, but I'm wondering what the environment you're seeing is like, where certainly on the junior side, prices on a lot of things are down a lot, and how you balance and what opportunities or types of opportunities might be out there. And again, you can make that more general if necessary. And just any thoughts on that environment?
Yeah, no, we have small investments in a handful of companies, some of which are in Nevada. And we watch them, and we have a team here that all they do, well, not all they do, they spend a lot of their time on looking at other companies. There's every week goes by, one of these juniors comes out with a news release. So we have a database. We watch it all. We're in discussions with many different groups on a regular basis, and but we have to at the same time be careful and strategic. We don't want to adding an exploration project to our portfolio is not going to do us a lot of good.
Right.
It's just another place to spend money, so I think that from an M&A perspective, we need to go after things that are permitted and or already in production. And silver, you and I know it's like not an easy place to be. Like we could fill our portfolio up with gold assets tomorrow if we wanted to. I don't know why gold projects are so easy to come by, and we're trading 85 to 1, and we're mining 7 to 1, and then your listeners should know that for every 1 ounce of gold that the world mining industry mines, only 7 ounces of silver is mined, right? And yet we're trading at 85 to 1. So that tells you there's a disconnect, between what people think, what investors think, what the banks think, what the world thinks about how abundant silver is. It's not very abundant at all. And as a silver mining company, we look at ourselves as a silver mining company, it's tough, to find silver mines. They're just not around.
Yeah, that definitely factors in, and we'll see when perhaps that becomes more prevalent in the market, although conditions not getting any easier. So I think we'll be hearing more about that. We'll leave aside the whole green agenda today, but tack that onto the pile and is going to make an interesting environment. And
Well,
perhaps
don't forget, Chris, as I said earlier, the company's 20 years old. I'm not a geologist. I built this company through acquisition. And every asset that we own in our portfolio is through acquisition. So of course we have to be focused on that, but we have to be patient. We have to wait for the right opportunities, and they do come by, but it's all patience.
Yeah, and perhaps that ties in with my last question here, just as you look back on 20 years doing this now, what's the biggest thing you take away, whether that's something that went according to plan, something that deviated completely? What stands out the most from that past 20 years?
It's all people.
Yeah.
Really comes down to the team, right? It's being the CEO and founder of this company, we've gone through people along the way, and that's the toughest part is just losing people, having to bring on new people, re-educating people, keeping the team motivated and keeping them focused on the task at hand, and just remembering that or me instilling within them that our ultimate responsibility is to our shareholders, and that's the final check and balance is what do shareholders think? What is our stock price doing? What is our multiple compared to our peers? What's our profitability? What's our costs? And it's just that constant drilling in that message, and it's tough, because with silver prices fluctuates the way they do. We do our budgets at we just did our 2024 budgets, and they're not public yet. They'll be public shortly. But we pick metal price, based on what we think as a management team is going to be the average trading price for the year 2024. And that's how we fix all our revenue, which drives our costs, drives our exploration, drives our development, drives everything within the business. And if we're wrong in picking that metal price, all of a sudden we have to start firing people, cutting back exploration costs, and it's quite challenging.
Well, it's not an easy task that you've chosen in life, but I congratulate you on 20 years and all that you've accomplished. Obviously, the ups and the downs, running a company, handling the cycles in silver, although filling an important role that I think will pay off quite well for you in the years going forward. And might add, in wrapping up, people can obviously find out more about First Majestic Silver at firstmajestic.com. And with that said, Keith, just want to wish you and your family and everyone at First Majestic happy holidays, and hope you guys are all doing well. And I think there's a lot to look forward to in the silver space in the coming year, and we'll look forward to catching up with you then.
Well, thanks. And, just the importance of the mining sector, I think people should really be aware, because I think there's sometimes a disconnect between really what we do as an industry, for, the human race. And, if you get too tied up listening to politicians about extractive industries, we get kind of tied into that whole, phenomenon where you see your comment earlier about Panama, and this is an interesting transition we're seeing around the world, whereby, the extractive industries are being attacked. And it's all going to come down at ultimately, it's going to cause high inflation numbers. That's going to cause much higher metal prices. You got 5% of the world copper coming offline in the next 30 days, right? And if people don't think that's going to affect price, then they got rocks in their brains. But and we're seeing the similar kinds of actions from other governments around the world. And if we don't have copper and silver as part of our economy, then our standards of living will drop substantially. And it's up to us as voters and up to us as people to make sure our politicians understand really what we need. And I think people have to start voting for politicians that are pro-industry, pro-growth, and we have to support extractive industries. The extractive industries can extract minerals and metals from the planet in a safe way, and there's lots of technologies around that have proven that. And yet there are certain politicians around the planet that seem to think that that's not possible, right? So we'll shut down that industry because they can't produce X, in environmental or economic fashion. But that's complete nonsense. So I think that voters have to start to vote, with their wallet, and vote with their mind, and get some of these crazy people out of governments, because they're just completely nonsensical. And I don't know if that makes sense to your listeners, but I can tell you that the mining sector is on edge, because of stuff that's going on around the planet. And we as a mining sector cannot produce the metals that the world needs. Forget about building a house. Forget about building a car, because everything goes backwards. And we're going to be living in a freaking cave, 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah, well, like you said, I think the people listening today are quite familiar with the flaws of government politicians, and appreciate that you've been out there doing this for a long time, obviously running the company, but also speaking up about some of these things and getting in touch with some of these groups. And I think I found in my time covering the mining industry that, yes, there are some companies that do things perhaps in less than ideal fashion, although a lot of, I think, the companies that are still growing and successful put a lot of credence into doing things in an appropriate way, which I know is something you guys have focused on. So Keith, we'll wrap up for now, but thanks again for being here, for all that you're doing, and it's great to see you. And again, happy holidays to you and the team there, and we'll look forward to a great 2024.
And Merry Christmas to you and all your listeners as well.